Hey, what's up? Welcome to Offshore Audio. I'm Andrew, and this is the channel where I'm bringing you tips and tricks to mix better live events. On our quest to mix better live events as sound engineers, we often run into parts of our job that we don't know how to do or that we need to learn how to do. Sound mixers are incredibly complicated pieces of equipment, and we sort of learn how to use all the functionality gradually over a period of years. One thing that can confuse a lot of people is insert points on a digital mixer. What is an insert point? What do we use an insert point for? How do we insert effects, and why do you insert effects? In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the signal flow of where it comes in the mixer and how that relates to insert points, when and why we use insert points and what sort of things we insert into the signal chain, and we'll round it off with a tutorial on an M32 mixer, Midas M32, where I'll show you how to find effects and insert them into any channel. Before we get into that, if you want something to just give you a quick step forward in your mixing powers, then you can check out my guide, 3 Steps to Perfect EQ. You can find that at offshoreaudio.no/EQ. This is just a PDF guide with short, actionable steps that you can take to EQ better mixes starting today. So you can just find that at offshoreaudio.no/EQ or in the description down below this video. But without further ado, let's dive in. So insert points, right? We need to start thinking about signal flow, because what an insert point does is it sort of diverts the flow of the signal, right? It taps into the signal and it takes that audio signal away, whether that's a microphone signal or a DI, takes it away to somewhere else, processes it, changes it, alters it in some permanent way, and then reconnects it back into the chain, into the signal flow where it left. Before we start talking about the inserts, let's talk about that signal flow. It starts with your mic preamp or maybe a line level connection, but essentially your physical connection to the mixer. And that usually goes into your preamp section, gain, phantom power, polarity inversion, that sort of thing. And it then moves on to the next stage, which is probably filtering, high pass filter, low pass filter, and then EQ. And these might be 2 different stages as well. Finally, in digital mixers, it usually moves on to the dynamics section, which is gating, compression. Not necessarily in that order, maybe compression, gating, but there is usually a dynamics section before eventually the sound is passed down to the fader, and then the fader sends it further onto the master bus, the main mix, before going out to the speakers. Make sense? Good. If it doesn't, check out a video on signal flow. I'll leave a link down below. Now, on analog mixers, this signal flow, right, was usually fixed, right? It usually went mic, preamp, EQ, maybe dynamics, but probably not, then fader. And so the insert point was clearly at a specific point, usually between the preamp and the EQ. On digital mixers, we can actually insert the signal into the chain more or less wherever we want. We don't need to insert our processor after the preamp, but before the EQ. We could insert it after the EQ, or even after the dynamics. The question now becomes, when and where should we insert this insert point? Where should we have the insert point be? And the answer really is, it depends. What is it that you are trying to achieve? It's entirely up to you if you want to have your EQ and compression affect the signal before it goes to your inserted effects processor. Remember that if you compress the signal and then send it to another processor, that processor will react differently than if you had just EQ'd it and not compressed it, if that makes any sense. A great example is an auto mixer. We might connect our auto mixer using an insert point, but we might choose for that to be between the EQ and the dynamics section, because we want to alter the sound, we want to compensate for the microphone and the speaker, but we don't want to alter the dynamics because that affects how loud the sound is perceived to be, and we want the auto mixer to make that decision for us. Conversely, you might want to insert a de-esser before the EQ section, because you want to reduce any sibilance before you do something like boost or cut the high end of a signal. Food for thought. When do we use inserts then? When we want to alter the signal going forward, and we don't want to have the option of blending the original signal back with the altered signal. Let's look at a sort of retro example just to get the thinking going. On analog mixers, we didn't have compressors built in. We just had an insert point, and we would use that insert point to get compression onto our vocals. You would physically connect a compressor, which was in a rack, to the insert point so that the signal left mixer was compressed and then returned. We didn't want to blend the compression with our dry vocal. We just wanted the vocal compressed. I say we like I'm some sort of analog veteran. Now, on digital mixers, compression comes as standard, but one effect that you might be inserting all the time is a graphic EQ. Do you use a graphic EQ to tune your sound system? If so, you probably have to turn it on. Some mixers it just calls it on, but in other mixers they say you need to insert it into the signal chain. Another fantastic opportunity to use an insert point is guitar amplifier emulations. Not that I see that done hugely often, but I have had to do it once. You could connect your guitar through a DI box directly to the mixer, and then you could open up an amp emulator as an effect and patch it in. You could use it as an insert in the signal chain, so that once the guitar comes into the mixer, it is turned into a simulated amp signal. It's made to sound like it is a microphone on an amplifier. You can just go about your day pretending that you did in fact mic up an amplifier. Because you don't want to blend the amplifier signal with the dry guitar signal straight from DI. You just want to replace that with the amplified signal. And that's why we use an insert. Another great one is the de-esser. These are really useful in any sort of spoken word event, but they're not standard in the signal chain of most mixers. So what we do is we alter our effects rack, if you want to call it that, or effects page on our mixer to include a de-esser. And then we patch that in using an insert. We insert that into the signal chain of the channels that we want to apply the de-essing to. We can then use that to reduce the sibilance of a vocal microphone. Again, we do not want to blend the de-essed signal in with the harsh sibilant signal. We just want to get rid of the sibilance and only have the de-essed sound moving forward. Now, there are loads of other cool effects that you can fire up in your effects page and then insert into a channel. Things like dynamic EQ, or special compressors like 1176 emulators and other fancy things. Most digital mixers have these built in. We can also use the insert point to connect physical hardware like a physical 1176 to a certain channel. I won't get into that in this video, but leave a comment down below if that's something you'd be interested in learning about. For now, I'll show you how to set up the insert points on a Midas M32 mixer. The actions are specific to this mixer, but the principle remains the same. So let's have a look. First thing we want to do, right, is we're going to select our channel. I'm just selecting the first channel here. And on our home screen, let's page over to the second screen, configuration. And there's something I want you to look at here, right? You can see the signal chain up here at the top, right? You have your input section here where it shows your gain, right? And so it's moving from left to right. You can see the meters moving up when I speak. And then the next stage in the chain is the delay, if you want to set delay on the input. Then it's the low cut. You can see if I turn this low cut on and off, that comes on, lights up. Then it's the gate, same here. Then it's the EQ. Then it's the compressor. And then finally, it's the output, it's the fader here, which doesn't light up. So now you have a visual representation of the signal chain, the order that the signal moves in inside this mixer. Let's look at the effects rack then. So we click on the effects button and we'll go to effects home. And normally here you would have your effects that you send to, right? You know, you send down on bus 15 or something and then you return it on effects return 1, right? As is the case with this reverb here. Bus 13 is the input and then somewhere on the mixer here I have the return. But what we can do is we can change this to an insert, right? And by changing the bus, we scroll all the way down and after bus 1 there's something that says insert. And now we have changed this to an insert effect, right? What that means is it's no longer sending out to the effect and then being returned on a channel. It's doing it inline, inside this signal chain path here. And we'll talk about where in just a second. So what I can do now is I can change the type of effect to something like a de-esser. And I just click set to make that a de-esser. And now let's insert it, right? So it's been changed and it's been set to an insert. We need to pick a channel in which to insert this effect in the signal chain. So we go back to home on my channel, over to configuration again, and then you see on the right here, you've got this insert menu here, and you can use this dial here to just scroll up to effects slot 1 left, de-esser. So I've now selected effects slot 1 de-esser. The insert is turned on and off down here. And then if I go back to my effects, you can see in my de-esser that I have input here. And if I turn the settings up and you see the de-esser is now in action. It's inserted into the signal chain. Where in the signal chain
is it inserted? Back to the configuration, you see there is a dial here that says insert position, and currently it's set pre, which as we see up here is pre-EQ and dynamics. And I can change that post EQ and dynamics. So you're just deciding whether you have applied EQ and compression to your signal before you de-ess it in this case, or whether you want to de-ess it first and then apply compression. Let's look at another style then. Let's look at effects number 2. I'll go back to effects home, select effects number 2, and then I'm going to change it to a guitar amplifier. So remember I talked earlier about how you can actually even just plug a guitar straight in, DI the guitar, bring it into the mixer, and then emulate an amplifier. So here we have all sorts of amplifier settings, and we don't want that to be a send and return. We don't want to mix that with our dry, unemulated guitar signal. So we need to turn this to an effect. So we do exactly the same. We change it to effects. This has got 2 channels, so you could send 2 separate guitar lines to this one amplifier. And then again, we would select our guitar channel. We would go to our configuration. We would choose whether we want it to be pre or post EQ. I think I'm going to do it pre-EQ on this one. And then we would select over here, effects to left, which is the first slot on the guitar amplifier. And then if I go back to my effects tab and you look here, you see that I have the insert, and up here it says channel 1 is where this effect is inserted.
In summary, inserts are used to permanently alter the signal going forward, and we can choose at which point in the signal chain we want to create this alteration. Examples include graphic EQs on monitor sends or your main mix, de-essers on vocals, or amp emulators if that's the path that you're going down. Every mixer usually has a selection of special effects that you can fill out in the effects rack or the effects page, and then you can insert into whatever signal chain you like. Before we wrap up, I'll remind you that you can get a 3-step guide to perfect EQ by visiting offshoreaudio.no/EQ for that simple guide that gives you clear steps to better EQ. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a comment, let me know. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more of this, and like the video because it helps me and the YouTube algorithm know that this is useful content. For now, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!